Okay, Eli, we're back to talk NBA, and it's that time of year, my favorite time. Coming up here on Thursday is the NBA draft. This year looks to be just a fantastic combination of a lot of talent spread out, a lot of potential for movers and shakers on draft night. Some people want to move up, some people want to move down. I think a lot of it is because of the uncertainty of all of these prospects. You've got players who are slated to go anywhere between 4 and 20. Mm-hmm. It's unlike anything that I've really seen. Now, one thing that happens to me around draft time, I watch these games throughout the year. Nobody has enough time to watch every single college game. So you watch a player and he has a fantastic game and you're going, I can see him on my team. Mm-hmm. I can see exactly where this kid is going to fit. And then there's some players who you don't get a chance to watch. You go back and you watch their highlight videos. Oh man, he's so amazing. Then time passes, some time passes, and I usually take the time to go back and not only watch the highlight packages, which only tell you just a fraction of the story, but go back and watch the actual games. And when I watch the actual games, what do you know? I was wrong sometimes. There's a lot of things that jump out to me. So we're kind of looking at the big board. Everybody's mostly in agreement about the first 3 picks, although I have some beef or a bone to pick with some of that stuff. When you look at the board, who do you think people are most wrong about? Where are people striking out, and where are they wrong?
A player like Jarrett Culver is kind of a hit and miss. Like you said before, you weren't a big fan of him. I was off of 3 games, and then we watched the game earlier, and you're like, oh, he's a completely different player.
Exactly right. So we watched some games of him early on in the year, and I thought, oh man, this kid has a long ways to go mentally. Mm-hmm. And physically, he's probably like a B in terms of his just athleticism. He has the good measurables in terms of his length. But when you watch him play, he's just not an elite athlete. He's just kind of an average athlete. But yeah, like you're saying, then we watched him play a game the other day, and I said, oh, wow, he's doing some things from the first game of the year to the 21st or the 25th game of the year. He really started to show some stuff. So my impression has changed of Culver. I do think that he's definitely a top 10 prospect. Now we can start to argue about whether he's 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. I think the consensus is that he's the 4. What do you think?
Well, the Pelicans... we were talking about this before, but the Pelicans, you said that Pelicans should draft Jarrett Culver, and it would be kind of a perfect fit for them because their small forward position, Brandon Ingram, he isn't great, so Jarrett Culver I think would fit right in that starting lineup, or he can come off the bench, depending on how he plays first couple games.
And I think he can play the 2 or the 3. Yeah. He slots in, he can guard the 2. You can play him as a guard even next to Jrue Holiday, and I think you got a pretty feisty backcourt.
And he's tough. He's a tough guy, but the NBA is much more tougher. And there's players like Markelle Fultz who thought number 1 pick. Is he in Orlando now? Well, I don't know where he's at anymore.
I think he is in Orlando. And guess who was saying last year that Fultz doesn't have what it takes?
You.
I was saying it. Yeah, I said mentally he doesn't have what it takes. People, we'll get onto this in a minute, but this groupthink starts to develop. One person says, that I think this is the best player in the draft. Somebody else gets on board. Next thing you know, everybody's looking at Markelle Fultz and they're going, geez, he scores from 3 levels. He led the nation in scoring. He seems to have this silky smooth jumper. He can get it going left or right. He can stop on a dime. He can, And then pretty soon, 99% of everybody says, oh, he's just a surefire number 1 pick. Well, hold on. That's not how basketball works, right? So we have a similar thing this year. Everybody knows that Zion Williamson is the number 1 pick. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Zion is a unique, sort of a generational athlete. He has these physicals that just, we've never seen anything like it. 280 pounds or even 270, or I think he should probably trim down even further, but just jumping out of the gym, he's got this quick twitch, explosive first leap and second leap. He gets to every ball. Is he definitely the best player in this draft? I'll put the question to you. 99.999% of people say yes. Are you one of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, who else would rival him? John Morant. I think he's great, but he's not that level. RJ Barrett even. He has a chance, but I mean, will he have a better overall career? Probably not. I mean, some people are even saying that he's rivaling LeBron, Zion is. And I'm kind of like, that's a little too far. I mean, again, LeBron was generational talent back when he was drafted, and it's like he drafted out of high school. I mean, you're not going to rival the great LeBron or the great Michael Jordan. It's going to be really tough. So, I mean, this kid has a lot to prove.
So let me tell you something that I see with Zion that not a lot of people are talking about, okay? When I look at him, I see kind of a Blake Griffin. Okay, so Blake is a little bit taller, but when Blake was in college, he was putting up numbers very similar without even looking. I'm probably, very similar numbers, I think, to Zion. He had this athleticism that was just insane. He was posterizing guys. He was rising up where his head's at the rim. He was doing Zion-like things. He didn't have the greatest shooting touch. Like Zion. Okay, let me throw out a few more names that kind of evoke this Zion level athleticism. Sean Kemp, a little bit before your time, but just a nasty, embarrass you type of dunker, just shaming guys left and right. Okay, how about a guy like Antonio McDyess? Again, a little bit probably before your time. Derrick Rose, just this insane athleticism. A Dominique Wilkins. I could go on down the list. What do these people have in common? Is there any like common thread that you can sense?
Well, I know Derrick Rose had basically a career-ending injury.
What about Blake Griffin?
An injury again. That kind of just. I mean, it wasn't career-ending because he's been forced now in Detroit to be kind of a ball-handling, dominant player. He's kind of worked out well.
Sure. What about Sean Kemp? You wouldn't know, but blew out his knee.
Yeah.
Blew out his knee. Blew out his knee. Blew out his knee. Blew out his knee. And I could go down the list. Guys that have that sort of athleticism, and they don't come along very often. The human body is not made for that sort of strain. And now you're gonna magnify that by having a 260, 270 pound frame. Okay, what if I told you right now, Zion Williamson is the next Blake Griffin, okay?
Okay.
And RJ Barrett is the next Paul Pierce. Which one do you want?
Ja Morant.
You want Ja Morant?
Just kidding.
Okay. Just between those
okay.
two. Would you? I'm kind of asking. Would you rather have Blake Griffin or Paul Pierce?
Yeah, Paul Pierce.
Okay, so I'd rather have Paul Pierce too. Now we can have that argument. I'm a Celtics fan. Paul Pierce is my boy, but I think that he's the more well-rounded player, and I think that if you knew that going in, which I'm sort of laying out the framework, some evidence here for why. It may be true that the safer long-term pick is RJ Barrett over Zion Williamson.
You just triggered people just punch their monitor.
I know there's like cats flying out windows and stuff. Everybody's going crazy. I'm telling you why. There's a chance, and I'm not saying this is a fact. There's a chance that he's the better pick. Okay, so here's another thing that I wanna ask you about. When you're thinking about what it takes to make a championship roster, to win it all, how many championship teams can you think of that don't have a superstar, sort of a two-way superstar that's about 6'7"? Okay, I'm talking about RJ Barrett here.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can compare him to a Ja Morant or other guys on the list. Zion, to me, even though he's listed at 6'6" or something like that, I could see him playing small ball 5 or definitely playing a power forward. But what I'm saying is, think about the teams that have a superstar two-way wing player who's about 6'6", 6'7", something like that. Kawhi, okay. Before Kawhi, Clay. Before Clay, Kobe. Before Kobe, MJ, or even Scotty. What's the last championship team that didn't have one of these guys? And then my follow-up question is, Can you name championships teams that didn't have a superstar 6'3" point guard like John Morant? Because I can. So I could give you the list of NBA champions. Let's go NBA champions by year. And list of NBA champions. Okay, let's just take a look here. We don't want to go 1947. Okay, so we got Clay, Kawhi, Miami Heat, LeBron, LeBron, Paul Pierce, Kobe, Kawhi. Here's one. Okay, so 2011 or 2000. What year is this? Oh no, this was 2006. In fact, in 2011, I think would be the first one that you could point to because maybe the Dallas Mavericks didn't have one. Sean Marion was on that team. I'm rambling a little bit here, but I think I'm making the point that you have to consider the long-term risk that comes along with taking a guy. Are you certain that it makes sense to take a point guard? Like a 6'3" point guard? Does a 6'3" point guard deliver you to the promised land? And if he does, how often? Did the Kobe teams need a superstar 6'3" point guard? Nope. Did the MJ's teams? Nah, they just throw Steve Kerr, BJ Armstrong, Ron Harper, Derek Fisher. You can go down the list. Now, Steph is maybe looks to be one of the exceptions to this rule. He's a 6'4" point guard. The Warriors are almost an outlier in every scenario because they're just stacked top to bottom when they were winning. But and again, I'm not going to go ahead and say that RJ Barrett is going to be a better pro than Zion Williamson. But if you ask people right now, is that a possibility? No. Just 0%. Up and down the board, 0%. There's no chance that Zion Williamson could be Blake Griffin and RJ Barrett could be Kobe. But it's not 0. I'm telling you it's not 0. It's more like 60-40? 70-30?
So, if you had a number one pick, would you pick Zion or RJ Barrett? This is going to be interesting.
Okay, now I would. Ooh.
Oh no! Don't do it. Just don't do it.
I would consider trading down to 3.
Oh my!
I would consider trading down to 3 and taking RJ Barrett. I really would. People think that Zion's the next LeBron James. Yeah, I'm gonna go super controversial. I'm gonna charge. You know how much I'm gonna charge you to move from 3 to 1 for the Knicks? I'm gonna fleece you for like 4 first-round picks just to move up. I'll take 2 first-round picks in the future and 2 pick swaps with a Knicks team that's gonna be, garbage. I'll move down. I'll take RJ Barrett. I got my Paul Pierce, and now we'll see if Zion's knees hold up.
Oh my!
I'm not winning any fans here, especially not any Zion fans. So bring on the hatred. But yeah, that's where I stand on that issue. Okay, as far as other movers and shakers in the draft or people who I feel like are not being valued correctly, I'm going to say Rui Hachimura. I've seen this guy listed going, here I'm looking at Tankathon 18th. I've seen him 24th. I see him sliding into the early to mid 20s. There's just absolutely no way that this guy is a prospect that ought to be in the 20s. If we look back on this draft and Hachimura is the fourth best player in this draft, I will not be surprised. Now, if he's in somewhere in that 8 to 12 range, that would be more along what I expect. But I would not be absolutely shocked if he was the 4th or 5th best player. As far as people who are moving the opposite direction, the wrong way, DeAndre Hunter for me. The more I watch of those Virginia games, the less I see that really wows me. It seems that it's all in his physicals. 16 points and 5 rebounds, and that's about it. Not really falling in love with that. Another guy who I was intrigued by early on, it was Nasir Little from North Carolina. Nasir is one of these guys that I mentioned early on in this pod that you watch his highlight video and you go, whoa, look at that, like high flying. Look at him lock this guy up on defense. You go back and watch the games and it's like, where's that lockdown D? He does it in spurts, and people say that he's an energy guy with a high motor. If you watched his highlight videos, he does look like a guy with a really high motor. The more actual footage I watch, he looks like he plays in spurts, like really high energy sometimes. He's not bringing that Draymond level intensity. I see him kind of dogging it, kind of taking plays off. When, the focus is on him and his man has the ball and he's on camera, then sometimes he looks really tough. When he's playing some help side defense, sometimes he's just ball watching. Sometimes he's falling asleep. He's going down my list. I've got him out of my top 20 now. Really? Sorry, Nasir. I thought you were my kind of guy, but it turns out you're not. Let's see, who else? Sekou Doumbouya, the more that I see of him, the more that I like. He's kind of gone up and down. I started out kind of lower on him. I watched some more clips. I got really high on him. I see that there's some flaws in his game, but he's only 18 years old. So now I have him as extreme upside pick. I think he needs to be in the right kind of system in order to succeed. I think he wants to be like a fast-breaking rim runner who gets buckets in transition. I think he's going to be maybe a little bit less effective early on in the half court. But I definitely have Doumbouya as a top 10 guy. And then Cameron Johnson is another guy that I've fluctuated on. Didn't realize he was a fifth-year senior who's going to be 24 years old here pretty shortly. So I think that with his frame, there's a little bit less room to grow. I would project him as sort of a Ryan Anderson type, who's just a nice knockdown shooter if you've got James Harden dominating the ball and swinging it out. But I don't see much more than that. And then my pet player, my new sort of favorite guy in the draft who I think the Celtics ought to nab in the 20s is Ty Jerome. This guy's a winner. The more I watch of him, just love his game. Does all the little things whenever Virginia had a sort of a crunch time moment, needed a bucket, needed somebody to just take action, take over the game. Guess who it was not? It was not DeAndre Hunter. Yeah. It was not. And oftentimes it was Kyle Guy, but you know who was setting him up? Ty Jerome, exactly. So Ty Jerome is my gritty pick for somebody who's undervalued, who probably, when we look back at this, he should have been taken in the top 20, and somebody's going to wait until the very end. It's probably the Spurs. The Spurs are the type of team who are going to grab him and make me cry because they'll probably do it. Maybe if they do it at 19, I'd be really sad, but I don't think they'll reach that far. I think that there's no way that he would get past the Spurs at 29 because he's just a Spurs kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so another thing that as we're going around the NBA here, we're just going to kind of hit the high spots in the news. Sounds like all indications are Kyrie's going to Brooklyn.
Yep.
And what does that mean for D'Lo?
I think he has to leave. I mean, again, we talked about some other video earlier. We talked about how it's a guards league, but playing 2-point guards that play mediocre defense, mediocre to no defense at times, you're not going to win. So I think, and D'Lo's going to feel replaced. He's not going to want to play shooting guards. It's not his natural position. He wants the ball. Two ball dominant players. I think he wants to leave, possibly to a team like Phoenix. Mm-hmm.
How does he fit in Phoenix? I'm trying to think of who they. You've got Booker. They for a while they listed Booker as the point guard. Do you think he is a point guard?
No, he's a pure shooting guard. He's like he shoots, and he's not a passing point guard. That's for sure. He's not a real point guard. He's not.
He can create. Some of his numbers were a little bit inflated because of his usage rate, and he's pretty good off the dribble. But I think I agree with you that he prefers to be off the ball, or Maybe he doesn't prefer to be off the ball. Maybe he likes just getting 70 points. But you know what? The team is better if he's off the ball, and there can be moments in the game when he can have the ball and he can take over. But to me, he should focus on being like a Joe Johnson, Joe Johnson type who. He just has that silky smooth jumper. He can get a little in the post. He can get a little in transition. He can get a little on the spot up. And then sometimes he just morphs into Ray Allen and starts running off of screens and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. What I don't love, though, is when he just monopolizes the ball, brings it up, does his own thing. That's not winning basketball, and hopefully they can figure that out. So if D'Lo goes there, you put those two together, are you going to give up 140 points a game, or what are you going to do?
You're going to have to pick up another point guard or just a guard in general that can play decent defense. And, a guard like that, it's tough to find one. Just a gritty, all-around guard from free agency. But, it's not impossible.
You put D'Lo and Booker and T.J. Warren out there on the court at the same time.
Lord.
Wow, you talk about a sieve. That team is not going to stop anyone. Yeah. Ayton, I don't know. I think he projects as a pretty decent defensive center, but from what I've seen, it's not that reliable yet. So, but you like the pairing. Now, if you're Phoenix, do you go ahead and give him a sort of a max or a pseudo max? You say, well, we'd love to give you a max, but Booker only makes like $27 million, so we'll give you the 27. Would you give D'Lo $27 million?
Yeah. If he accepts, I'll take that.
You'll take it?
It's a great deal, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you sign him, how many games do you think you're going to win next year?
Well, it's going to be improved. I'm saying...
I don't know how many they won last year, but it wasn't very many.
They were like 15 seed. I'm saying...
Can they win 35 games?
I think they can. That team has so much potential. I don't understand how you lost so many games last year. With that team, like that starting lineup, it looks decent, Mm-hmm. You have D'Angelo Russell, Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, and then... Did they get rid of Marquise Chris, I think?
They did get rid of him.
Well, yeah. Then you have Ayton, and then, have a forward.
Figure out who's at the four. Didn't they sign Trevor Ariza? I think they did sign Trevor Ariza.
Yeah, I don't know. But if they do, it's another guy right there. And I think that team should win more games than expected. But again, the Suns are just a joke to me, so I wouldn't be surprised if they lose, 70. I don't know.
Sure. Okay, so the other half of that coin is Kyrie moving on from the Celtics.
Yeah.
Celtics fans are really in a state right now. They don't know whether to be happy or sad, rejoice that Kyrie's leaving, or lament the fact that he's leaving and we're not getting anything back in return. I'll give you a related question. If Kyrie walks and they get nothing for him, are the Celtics better next year? What's their record? And that's a loaded question, so I'll just ask you, how much worse are they if Kyrie leaves?
Not much worse at all. I think that team has more freedom. And last year, I think Brad Stevens tried way too hard to involve Kyrie with his old system, and it didn't work. He had to change his whole system just to fit around Kyrie. And that's something you shouldn't be doing, even whether, if it's LeBron James, try to fit him in, or just make a whole new game plan. But, if it's Kyrie Irving, you have many other players that are playing the same amount of minutes that just aren't scoring. Jason Tatum had a down year. And I think, comparing to his last year, a player like Terry Rozier, if he can perform like he did, the playoffs last year, I'm not mad. I think, go ahead and walk. Because, he brought bad vibes to the locker room, saying you're this leader that you weren't. You couldn't even lead a team past, the Bucks were great. But we couldn't even lead a team past second round after the previous year we went to the East Conference Finals, one game away from finals. That's devastating. And I think Celtics fans will say goodbye, but we just got to get over it,
Yep. And I'm in agreement. I think that's just not Celtics basketball. That's not the brand of basketball we want to be playing, with Kyrie pounding the ball up at the top of the key. I don't want to overstate it because he is an amazing talent. He sort of redefines tough shot maker. He makes some just impossible shots. The way that he finishes with both hands is something like I've never seen before. That said, do the Celtics win fewer games? I think we won 49 last year. I think they win.
We win more.
I think they're going to win 50 without him.
Yeah, it's not even that difficult. If we just play free basketball with,
I think the defense gets better. I think that Rozier returns to form. I think Hayward is going to be better.
Much better.
Maybe Bob Williams gets a little bit of run. I'm not counting on him for anything. Smart, he seems to be invigorated, all defense first team. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum,
just going up.
Yep. I think that this team, their identity needs to be defense first and then scoring points in transition and building these small to medium-sized leads and just protecting them with grit.
Yep.
You throw Horford, let's say you could draft somebody at 14, slot him in there maybe next to Horford. Maybe I think that there are players in this draft that you can get at 14 that can play right away. Hachimura, I think, is one of them. His game is mature. I don't really know what people are saying when they look at him and say that he needs development or he's mentally not processing the game or whatever. Don't see it. I think that kid is really going to be really good. Even a Brandon Clark might be able to step in, although I'm much higher on Hachimura.
I think at 20, if he drops farther, Keldon Johnson, bring him off the bench. Saying if you're Gerd going against Marcus Smart, it's like, oh, God bless, he's coming out, and then Keldon Johnson comes walking in. That would be an absolute dream.
Can you imagine it's a switch league now, but you're getting guarded by Smart, and you're like, geez, just somebody switch, and then you switch and you got Keldon Johnson on you. he's harassing you. Yeah. Then you switch and you got Al Horford, and it's like, come on, there's just no relief. That sounds like a dream to me. Putting those types of guys together, whether or not you've got enough shooting on the court, I think is going to be a question, but I think we'll wrap it there. That's sort of the highlights of today's in a sort of a slow news day, but thanks for hanging with us, and we'll keep the NBA content coming.